26, 1943, German aircraft began their spy mission in Soviet territory. Suddenly, 4,000 meters high in the area of Kaluga, the German pilot unexpectedly hears the French language, and it was the beginning of the official part of military history of the legendary regiment Normandy Neyman.
Personally, for me, it's a terrific recollection. I learned a lot from the Russians. I was quite a young pilot, and it was on the front that I became a fighter.
French and Soviet pilots will fight together to the end of the war. The story of Normandy Neyman, as told by French film director Jan Dreville. In 1960, he produced this artistic film of the first Soviet-French joint military project.
He escaped from Dakar in the hope that a miracle would take place at least once. All that remained for him was to avenge it.
It was a fictional film, and so didn't receive any criticism for its inaccuracy.
The film was excellent, but it was not possible to tell a lot due to the politics of the time.
And war is a place where political issues are put to the side. War is war, and we fought.
Interesting. What sort of people were they?
On September 1st, 1942, General de Gaulle signs the order about the formation of a voluntary group of air fighters. De Gaulle's order created the Fighting France to save the reputation of his country publicly, while the official government collaborated with Hitler.
Your courage is commendable, but what are you flying for? To serve the Soviets. In London, before I was given the aircraft, I was asked to learn English. You are not required to learn Russian. They give you the fighter plane immediately. I was very happy with this.
Before they went to the Soviet Union, French pilots were sent to Rajak Air Base in Lebanon from different places, North Africa, Middle East, and Great Britain. The new group was named Normandy in the honor of the French province almost ruined by fascists. In autumn 1942, the battle in Stalingrad is underway, and on November 29th, at Ivanovo Airdrome, the first French planes of the voluntary Normandy unit land. Only 14 pilots arrive in the first group. Marcel Albert, DJ Begin, Yves Bizgen, Raymond Derville, Albert Durjan, Noël Castellan, Yves Maget, Marcel Lefebvre, Albert Litoff, André Pozensky, Albert Preziosi, Roland Delapape, Yesef Rizzo, Jan-Lou Trulian. Most of them did not meet Victory Day. By the end of May 1943, the Normandies had 15 air battles, destroyed 9 airplanes of the enemy, and lost 5 pilots. The commander of the 1st Air Army assigns Normandy to the 303rd Fighter Aviation Division, commanded by the hero of the Soviet Union, General Major Yolgi Zakharov, who had participated in the wars in Spain and China.
General Zakharov was the right commander, who could unite the Russians and the French. There were never problems with him. General Zakharov was an amazing man. We admired him as a pilot and as a man.
The hero of the Soviet Union, Roland Delapape, was in the first group of French pilots. Only today could he say that another guy wanted to command the Normandiers.
I was familiar with Stalin's son. It was located at the airfield next to ours. And because at that time Normandy had become quite famous, he asked his father about the command of our group. He was sure that it was easy to mix the Russians and the French. Well, the idea was a good one, but Stalin's son could not do this because of his bad temper. Two colonels were always near him. One of them was always holding an ashtray, the other a cigarette. This was Stalin's son, and his father did not want to change the situation.
Another hero, Jacques de Sandefal, was still in London in summer of 1943. He was actively looking for an opportunity to get to the front. His friend Henri Foucault came to him and said that he had found the Normandy group that fights in Russia. The French have losses and need new people.
I said to him that he is very brave, but it is very cold there and all perished. But Foucault answered that it was the only possibility to fight if you go there. But in any case, I have included you in the list.
The travel to faraway and mysterious Russia was a difficult mission. At the beginning of World War II, Pierre Lornjon was a student at the aviation school. After the occupation of France by Hitler, the school was evacuated to North Africa. For refusal to fight for the fascists, Pierre was sent to a disciplinary unit. He was liberated by the Americans after they landed in North Africa. It took 3 months for Pierre to get to Russia. He arrived in Tula at the end of 1943.
I went as a volunteer to Normandy Neumann, from Algeria, through Cairo to Beirut, Tehran, Baku, Astrakhan, and Moscow. That is why it took us so long to get to Tula. 2 days later, the squadron left for the front until the war's end.
During the battle in Kursk, French pilots made more than 120 combat missions and estimated to have won about 30 victories. It was devastating for Normandy. The French lost 6 pilots during the first 5 days of battles. Normandy was called back from the front.
Damn, he had to keep on my tail. He left me and was knocked down. The smallest mistake cost him highly. Our job is not as you think. We have to fulfill the mission and stay alive, and then start again, and then we prefer to attack. I need my own Fritz, and 2 for me, and I need 5 for the beginning. 2, 3, have you heard? And how many for you? Such nights, without fear and complaints.
It was a law for the French, and they adhered to this law. They said that God is for everybody, but every man for himself. What exactly does this mean? God cares for all, but you as a person must be responsible for yourself. We had a different principle. You may fail, but you must save your friend.
We had group battle tactics, not individual battles, but in groups. What was the essence of a pair? That when the leader is attacked, the supporter defends. He comes to the other's side. We are moving all the time. We covered each other. They took off as a whole regiment, but were fighting individually, and they returned separately as well. It was absolutely forbidden in our regiment, but the Germans were fighting in pairs very well. If you are alone, they will surely pick on you.
They, you know, somewhere, somehow flew and flew to us. They were destroyed by Germans straight away. Only 6 out of 14 of them survived. It was good that new pilots came. They enlarged the numbers. But in fact, we were frightened. There were no fighter regiments left.
In spite of large losses, the French tactics remained and could not be changed. This is evidenced by the story of Marcel Perrin.
He was a master pilot. He was not greedy. He took down a plane and flew away. Perrin sat down and said, "Again I was arrested by the commander. Again I was not allowed to fly." We asked why. He said, "I threw it away." He left the commander alone in the battle, once with 9 of the measures.
На каких самолетах предпочитаете летать? Английских, американских?
Which planes do you prefer to fly? English, American, Russian? We came to fight together with you. We will fly on your planes.
Et nous volerons sur vos avions.
At the beginning of the war, it was expected that aerial combat would be at high altitudes, 5 kilometers and higher. But in reality, the majority of air combats were at altitudes of 1,500 to 3,000 meters. Under these conditions, the French chose Yaks.
Yak is a good aircraft. Your major is also good.
All Normandy pilots liked the Yak, especially the Yak 3. It was the lightest compared to the Yak 9 or the Yak 11. It was very flexible and built in large quantities. And if Germans were defeated in battle for the skies, it is thanks to the superiority of the Yaks and the number of pilots which Russia guided to the front to eliminate losses.
Do not trust anybody. Do not trust anybody. Nothing. The airplanes were good. The airplanes were excellent. They were easy to use and maintain. They were easy to control for the pilots.
This aircraft was easy to fly, and it was very simple to land. But Yak 3 was a little bit weak for fighting with a plane like the Fokker-Wulf or the Messerschmitt. It was particularly weak at heights.
It was difficult to control. It had short wings, comparatively narrow planar, fragile nose, with almost no equipment to navigate. And one had to be very brave, since they were flying at night and in the frost and when it was snowing. Fokker-Wulfs were better in such conditions. I'd like to say that the conditions were extreme. Fokker-Wulfs were better in such conditions. I would like to say that the Messerschmitt 109 at that time was technically superior compared with Russian airplanes, but not in the hard conditions of winter.
Comrade General, the aircraft are not acquainted with the snow and frost. It is probably -30. Pardon? A snowstorm, pardon, while landing in the snow.
In Russia, the weather conditions were very hard. Winter, long showers, and the landing strip was covered with wet mud which stuck. Sometimes we had hostile battles. The Russians gained some experience. Sometimes the temperature of the air was about -52, and we could not even start the engines. Some Russian kulibins found a method how to start the engine, and they were able to fly. It was a surprise that we were sitting in our M109s on the airfields and had to watch how these craftsmen were flying over our heads and shooting for us. It was a device with the help of which the engines could be started in winter. Every truck of the Russians, which was allocated at the airfield, had this device on the roof of the cabin. In order to start the engine of the airplane, the mechanic brought the truck, placed it opposite the airplane, attached this device to the axis of the propeller and started the engine.
Today you will hear the true story of how the aircraft technicians for Normandy were chosen.
The impetus for this was an interesting case. Tula, avoiding parking our aircraft, noticed that there were no French mechanics with any specialties, and Russian gunsmiths were cleaning our guns and machine guns in the stock. He asked, why are the Russians working, and where are the French?
They had a lot of difficulties. They did not know the language, they were not technically prepared well enough, and they did not know the planes. The climate was very hard for them. It led to the situation that at the end of the first campaign, only 4 pilots remained alive, and all the French mechanics returned either to England or Europe.
And when Tula happened to be in Moscow, he said that the French pilots in Russia will remain until complete victory over fascism, but only with Russian engineers.
Soviet mechanics were selected in 2 ways. The first attempt was not very successful because commanders did not want to give the best specialists away. The first technicians were not satisfactory to Sergei Agavaljan, so he made the second selection himself. Agavaljan examined every aircraft personally and met the technician who serviced the plane.
Sergeant Major Nikitin, where is your airplane? Here is my plane. He examined the plane. Sergeant Obikov, where is your plane? Here is my plane. Speaking about personnel, so Agavaljan could collect about 30 specialists. Agavaljan gathered all of us and said very secretly, the bus will be placed near the headquarters of the regiment. All of you should arrive. Keep your mouths shut. Keep quiet. And so on and so forth. We all did this.
The mechanics left their regiment secretly. Next morning, the scandal broke. Almost all of the aircraft of the regiment visited by Agavaljan were left without mechanics.
The chief of staff of the 6th Reserve Regiment came and said of Agavaljan, where are the mechanics? What are you doing? The train arrived and we are in the carriage. The train moved. Farewell. And moved forward. From then, our front life started. I do not remember when we arrived, or how many aircraft were there. Anyway, all the airplanes were on the aerodrome. And when we arrived there, Agavaljan said, guys, it's necessary to repair all the planes.
French pilots and Russian mechanics worked well together. The technicians' competence was high, so was their friendship and help, as well as their understanding of how hard the climate was for them helped a lot.
I finished work, sometimes in 2 hours, sometimes I worked the whole night, because if shot in the fuel tank, the tank had to be replaced. Everything is needed, 200 screws. But these screws needed to be turned by a screwdriver while lying down. You are lying and turning and turning.
Will you finish by morning?
It is too cold.
Your French knocked down the first Fritz, and we mechanics have to celebrate his victory in our way and bring the airplane back, repaired and in time.
It is best to celebrate the victory with a glass of vodka.
No supper, nothing. You see how at 12 midnight, or a little bit earlier, he is coming with a lackey. Sasha, are you alive? Alive? He will bring something. Mainly, he'll bring something to drink. I did not drink too much.
We shared everything we had with them to explain what kind of friendship we had between French pilots and Russian mechanics. I can tell you that one day I was sitting in the plane and Terekhov, my mechanic, asked me to write down my name on a cigarette package, which he gave to me. Also, he presented me with this knife. This knife served me for a long time when I was in Russia. It was with me all the time. Sometimes I used it to eat. I am keeping this knife with me for all my life. It goes everywhere with me. It was an amazing gift, especially because it was handmade, without any special instruments. It was made for me personally. Russian mechanics, we were brothers, friends, and even fathers.
The war is a very tough test. You can perish on any day. In spite of all of this, the normal human life does not stop, even during war. Both pilots and mechanics were young men.
In summer, when it was quiet at the front, we had parties together. Russians and French were always together. Accordion, steam bath, and dancing after all the wine and beer.
They are so happy and full of life. Tatiana was their favorite song.
Разлучались полночью туманною, уводила в бой меня звезда. Распрощались с Танею, с Татьяною, не забыть ее мне никогда, никогда. Под огнем окаянную, девичье лицо со мной всегда. В бой лечу я с Танею, с Татьяною, с нею мне.
Once every 1 or 2 weeks, we were taken to the Red Army House in Tula. We were shown a performance or a film there, and then we danced. We met with many beautiful young girls. We often walked together with them. This was called to escort them home. Some of them agreed, some refused, and you had to walk back. 7 kilometers in minus 35-degree frost. It was very risky. They often agreed and invited you home. Poor ones, they had nothing. But the table was always served excellently.
It happened that French pilots and young Russian girls became close. Alexander Lauren married just before his return to France. He arranged everything so that his girlfriend Rita could go with him. They had 2 kids.
There were many romances in those days. For example, there's the story of Roger Savage. He also had a child with a young woman from Lithuania. He had a baby girl, and she looked a lot like him because Roger Savage was born in Martinique. The girl was the same type as her father, and she had his face.
Natalie, director of the Normandy Neyman Museum, is situated in a lovely town of Les Andelais, not far from Paris. Marcel Lefebvre was born and raised here. He was a commander of the Cherbourg flying unit. He is also buried here. He is one of the 4 Normandy heroes of the Soviet Union and was given this title upon his death. There is a street and school named after Marcel. In the early 90s, Robert, Marcel Lefebvre's brother, founded the museum dedicated to Normandy Neyman. The museum is unique, and no other is like it. Many original exhibits and documents about the life of the legendary regiment are displayed there. Some personal items of Marcel contain a small photo of a Russian girl, which attracted our attention. The director of the museum said her name was Nina. She was a secretary in the headquarters.
That was a story of a young girl, General Sakharov's secretary. She committed suicide because she was in love with Marcel Albert.
She shot herself on October 17, 1944. Nina's body was found near the airfield among the trees. The French were away on a mission at the time. In the official history of Normandy, there is not a single mention about this tragedy. While looking through the photos, Pierre Laurent suddenly mentioned the girl's name.
This is Nina and Lefebvre, who was a commander of the 3rd Unit.
We asked him to tell us Nina's story.
This is a very challenging request. I don't know how to respond. She was a very beautiful girl, natural blonde, very charming. She was Albert's girlfriend.
Albert was very much in love with her. Anytime when Nina was mentioned, he blushed, turned pale, sometimes almost blue. He was afraid that someone might become interested in her. They were together for 3 or 4 months, while usually such a relationship did not last more than a week.
Many years after Nina's tragic death, we found a witness of the story. Only a few Soviet officers knew the truth about this tragedy. They were ordered to keep silent that several officers had chased Nina, and a jealous Politruk was among them.
He loved that woman very much and allowed this to happen because being jealous was a big surprise for all pilots of our regiment and French pilots as well. Now something could be disclosed. Earlier it was not possible because ultimately I signed a paper of confidentiality.
He could be forgiven if he was clever, but this was not his case. He wasn't even cunning. We should not have to tell him about what we know. Politruk, who was there, cold-bloodedly killed the girl's secretary because she was Albert's girlfriend. He killed her absolutely cold.
Прощай, моя желанная, смерть отсрочек дважды не дает. Эту песню станью с Татьяною, с Татьяною. За меня товарищ да поет, да поет.
On November 28, 1944, for service in battle and courage during air battles for liberation of Lithuania and for breaking the defense of fascist troops on the river of Neman, 1st Fighters Regiment, Normandy fighting France, was given the title Neman. Since that day, the regiment was known as Normandy Neman. The second large operation with the participation of Normandiers began in the summer of 1944. It was the Belarusian offensive Operation Bagration and one of the most dramatic episodes in the history of the legendary regiment Normandy Neman. The French pilot shot the Soviet pilot.
Major Marcelin, my compliments to the general. Translate to Major Marcelin word for word.
Général me prie de traduire mot à mot.
The French pilot just shot down Captain Tarasyenko just now. Tarasyenko said by radio that he was being attacked. He did not respond with fire. He waved his wings, turned around to show us his stars, but the Frenchman, like a blind man, he returned and fired a burst.
The official version, supported by episodes of the film, creates the impression that the French pilot was undoubtedly guilty and that the Soviet fighter perished. The witnesses of those dramatic events reject the official version and speak about the details of that tragic story.
In the film, I did not at all like that garbage that was said about Shah. That he shot down the Russian pilot from the 18th Guard Regiment. At the moment when he got him, the pilot saw this, waved the wings for our pilot to understand that this is not a German, but a friend. And our guy shot once again and finished with him. This was nonsense. It was not the case.
The witnesses note that the author of the memoirs, the chief of headquarters of the 18th Air Regiment, was at a different airdrome nearby and could not have seen what happened at the airdrome of Dubrovnik, where Normandy was situated. The case recounts. It was informed on radio that the German aircraft had appeared. 2 pairs of the French should take off. The first takes off, makes a circle and waits. The second pair takes off, but for some reason does not reach the required altitude.
They were Marshal and Miguel, his supporting pilot. The supporting pilot, Miguel, was flying very slowly. It meant to Shal that something strange was going on. The temperature was growing very rapidly on Miguel's plane. He was informed by the radio to land. Shal called the commander post. What should I do? He was told, follow the first pair. Work together. I saw this. I saw Miguel land and taxi while Shal followed.
It was heavily overcast. One could be lost in low clouds. Yak 3, number 60, took off to the required altitude, came up to the cloud and flew to the front of it. Maurice Shal was approaching his comrades.
He saw that Messerschmitt flew out of the cloud and go flying into another one. Shal noticed the Messerschmitt and dived into this cloud. He was turning around, twisting, did not see anything, and noticed the silhouette of the aircraft, looking like a Messerschmitt. Well, a water-covered Messerschmitt and a water-covered Yak have approximately the same shape. If you put them together on the land, they are absolutely different. But in the clouds, when you cannot see well, and only the silhouette can be seen, one could not see the service markings. It is not possible to identify what aircraft is there. Additionally, Shal saw a Messerschmitt, so he did not think that someone else was there.
Everything happens so fast during air combat, and the reaction of the pilots is immediate. What kind of reaction should Shal have had when he saw the known silhouette?
He pushed the machine gun trigger. That plane makes a left turn and shot directly at the cockpit. One shot on the nose and the plane went down. Shal followed him. The plane struck the ground and exploded. He kept on flying, but he did report that he shot down a Messerschmitt in this certain place.
Mistake, negligence in the air. Yak and Messerschmitt. He saw the German and shot at him. Since he was very good at shooting, he brought him down.
There was one more important detail. Shal thought genuinely that he had shot down a Messer. He reported to the airbase not only about the attack, but the precise place where the aircraft had fallen. General Zakharov came several hours later that in the place reported by Shal, an aircraft of the 18th Guard Regiment had fallen. Because Shal had notified the place of the crash and ground service came to the same place, it became clear that it was Shal who did it by his own hands. This was a tragic case, fatal coincidence, and not the mistake of an inexperienced pilot. But the story of Vasily Arkhipov's death was not finished, because the reasons of the following events could not appear in the official chronicles of Normandy Neyman. We will tell you about the continuation of this tragic story.
We were separated, and we were stationed at different aerodromes. It was only many months later that we were reunited, and they made a big party for us, because up to this day, we were afraid of the pilots of the 18th Guard more than the Germans.
Perrin came and said, "Do you know that today during a mission, someone was shooting at Albert Marcel? Prasa was over Marcel and he knows who. They were from the 18th Guard, and he knows the name and numbers of the plane. He shot and flew away. I don't like this."
Later, the incident repeated. Albert's yak, with 6 people aboard, was shot at again. Gossip was being spread that the pilots from the 18th Guard had decided for revenge for a perished friend.
Marcel was bristling, angry, talking with his comrades and said, "Enough, stop mocking me. I know who it is, and I will kill him." This was reported to Zakharov. Zakharov talked to Albert Marcel. After this conversation, there were no more attacks on Marcel. Zakharov closed this case.
Pierre Lorenz said that after the tragedy with Vasily Arkhipov, Shal said to him that he will not return back home alive. Pierre remembered his words and was looking after him. He tried to prevent one more tragedy. But during the air combat at the end of the war, Maurice Shal perished a hero's death. It happened on March 27th in 1945 in East Prussia. He was the last French pilot who perished in the battle. The regiment Normandy Neyman was fighting in the Red Army. The French had a lot in common with their Soviet combat brothers, the same aircraft and the same enemy. In spite of that, French had their own traditions. Not one of the Soviet mechanics addressed the French comrade lieutenant or comrade captain.
I had a lieutenant and always said, "My lieutenant, the aircraft is ready to fight." I asked my lieutenant, "How are you?" "All is fine. It's not like this, not H, but Koroshal. All is Koroshal." His friendly and simple attitude was real, but not in excess. The mechanic should get the aircraft ready so that it could shoot. The pilot could control it, and the engine should work well. That's it. My knees are painful now. The moment I recall, me feels the pain because of the aircraft.
Moral and ideology of the Red Army soldiers was the responsibility of politrunks. In the case of any problems, they were resolved by a special group in every unit. In a sense, the French were privileged. It is difficult to imagine how French aristocrats and middle-class bourgeois are cultivated by the proletariat ideology.
French policy is not to engage, and their faith is not to agitate. They are the people that came to help us in our most difficult moment, when the Germans came up to Volga. That is their whole profile.
They left us in peace, but they did everything that some fools avoided friendly relationship with us. They did not want the Russians to be sympathetic with us. They could not control us. They controlled only their own people. If one turned out to be a complete fool, we did everything to get rid of him. We reported to the general that we did not want to see him any longer. We said that he should take care of the Russians and leave us alone.
Half a year passed, and supporting forces which were promised to us so many times finally arrived.
I am dreaming. If they're in the Air Force uniform, here they are.
Then the door of the Douglas opened, and out comes the stepladder. Very small, 2 or 3 steps. And he shouts, "I am Russian! I am Russian!" We're shouting, "We're Russian! Good guy! Wonderful! We're Russian!" Well, he bumped into us shouting the whole time, "I am Russian!" We're saying, "Wait, why are you shouting? Tell us what your name is. What is your last name?" He said that his name is Uglov.
Leon Ulgov was Lev Ulgov in reality. He was a son of a white officer. De Gaulle did not want to include him into the members of Normandy, afraid that he would be sent to Siberia. But after the conversation with Stalin, the issue was resolved. Ulgov fought up to the end of the war. For his braveness, the French called him Russian Lion. This story about white officer's son who came with the replacements does not exist in Jacques Dreville's film. You will hear about it here for the first time. There's also one more important detail. Dreville, the director, had 2 consultants, veterans of Normandy, Konstantin Feltzer and Igor Ienbaum.
We had 3 French interpreters whose parents were Russian by birth. They served as translators for us, and we had no problems.
Igor Ienbaum, the interpreter for Normandies, was not from simple immigrants. His father, Vsevolod Volin, was a famous anarchist, the closest partner of Makhno. On August 1st, 1944, in the sky over Kennisburg, 5 Normandies were fighting with 12 enemy aircraft. Konstantin Feltzer was shot down. He was considered to be dead.
While he was ascending by parachute, he destroyed his French documents. Because the French were shot immediately, the French government had made a pact with the Germans. According to it, all French who were fighting against the Nazi fascists were considered to be traitors, where the Russians had the status of prisoners of war. And since he spoke Russian, and being Russian by birth, he pretended to be a Soviet soldier.
Kostya's personal items are kept in the museum, the pilot's book, and the badge of a prisoner of war. Kostya escaped from German captivity together with a Russian officer. It is amazing, but he could reach not only France, but return back to Normandy-Neiman. In January 1943, the new offensive by the troops of the 3rd Belarusian Front started in eastern Prussia. Normandy-Neiman actively participated in this combat operation. During the first month of 1945, the regiment had 454 combat flights, destroyed 40 and damaged 15 aircraft of the enemy. In February, the situation dramatically changed, and the Normandies had new losses. The Germans transferred the elite Luftwaffe to that particular part of the front. The French met the aces of Goering from the 51st Regiment named Melders.
They were real enemies. I mean the German pilots, especially the group of pilots from Melders, the elite of the German army.
To become a member of Melders Group, it was necessary to win 55 victories over the aircraft of the enemy. Hans Eckhart, Bob, received the Knight's Cross for 20 aircraft knocked down over England in 1940.
It was a special award, made of real silver, and which was given for 15 aircraft shot down. Such cups were given to unique services in Luftwaffe, graved accordingly, notifying the name and the rank of the pilot. We celebrated the event as follows. We filled the cup with beer, or on the other hand, the drinks which were stronger, brandy, for example.
härtere Sachen, Cognac oder was getrunken. Ja, also ich war zunächst mal
At the beginning, for almost 4 years, Grunherz was in the 54th Fighters Regiment, which participated in the combats at the northern front of Russia.
We all called them the aces. They painted all the cards there. The ace of spades, the ace of diamonds. Later I learned it was the famous Melders unit. We met them in Kuban, then near Stalingrad as well. We knew they were experienced at flying in pairs. It was not easy to come up on them. In general, they made the weather.
C'était un combat chevaleresque. Jamais
they were the Knights tournaments there. Neither we nor they shot pilots who were saved by their parachutes. Only one pilot was taken as a prisoner of war near Melders Air Base at Baltics.
On February 20, 1945, in the region of Palau, 6 Normandies on yaks were engaged in a combat with Messerschmitts of the Melders Group. The German commander brought down Lieutenant Blayton. He was taken prisoner of war. He was not taken by the Gestapo, who had orders to kill French pilots immediately.
Blayton descended by parachute and was captured. They kept him for 3 months at their airfield. If he was given to the Gestapo, he would have been shot in the head like the other 3. They gave him back to us the day the war ended, on the territory of Eastern Prussia.
The war for Normandies ended in Eastern Prussia.
Stalin said the winners should come by their own horses.
At the end of the war, Stalin gathered us in the Kremlin, and he presented us the airplanes. He literally said he was giving them to us as a gift, these aircraft on which we fought so bravely. With a lot of intermediate landings, we returned to France on June 20, 1945. Our squadron flew over Champs-Élysées fields and landed in Bourges, where we were met by General de Gaulle.
Our heroes had different post-war life. Jacques de Saint-Phal served in civil aviation. He preferred personal airplanes instead of personal cars. In total, he had 5 of them. He went shopping for food by airplane. He summarized his story. It is faster by airplane, 12 minutes only, and you spend an hour by car. At the end of our meeting, he became thoughtful and said,
I often thought about it. There was no hate, only anger. It would not be possible to exist under Nazi domination. I was fighting for my own country. Since France was totally occupied, this was why I fought.
Ivan Kukurin continued his career as a military pilot.
When the war was over, we didn't have the chance to rest for very long.
The pilot ace Ivan Kukurin participated in hot conflicts of the Cold War. He was proud of this. He participated in one of the first jet aircraft battles. These photos depict the meeting of the Normandy Name-On veteran, but you will not find Lev Leonidovich Mikhailov in them. After war, he worked in a secret organization, and any contacts with former airmates were absolutely forbidden. Once one of the Normandies located him and invited him to a reunion of war friends.
I turned to a special department. They said to me, "You will not even approach or be friends with any of them. You should remember this or it will be bad for you. And remember, after you retire or are taken to the reserve, you will not be allowed to show up and make friends with anybody."
Pierre Lorjean is still driving a car at 92 and controls the car like a fighter aircraft. We were interested in what he was doing after the war.
After war, how to say? Let's say as follows. I tested aircrafts and transferred them.
Voilà. Il y a un passage.
There was a time when nothing was happening.
Où il y a rien. Où je suis
I
devenu
became a paratrooper, military swimmer.
But these memories of his biography are not easy for Pierre to recall.
В небесах мы летали одни, мы теряли друзей боевых. Ну а тем, кому выпало жить, надо помнить о них и дружить. Ла-ла.